In this recording, we're going to review some of the basics of transformations, specifically shifts and reflections. And we're going to use our calculator heavily to have you discover some of these patterns, these characteristics of these transformations, rather than me just telling you, because I think it'll stick better. You learn it on your own. So, in the first left side column, you're going to look at this function here, this x squared function, which we know makes the parabola. Okay? And you're going to graph that parabola in your calculator, and also on the same axis, you're going to graph x squared minus 7 and see what effect subtracting a 7 outside the parabola main function has. And you'll note that. And we'll do some other transformations. And then we'll look in the middle two columns at different functions. And I'm hoping, based on your observations in the left column, that you'll be able to figure out 6 and 7 just using your knowledge of transformations. And then you can always check with your calculator. All right, so let's begin. Grab your calculator and let's put into y1. If there's stuff in there, just clear it out. Let's put into y1 x squared. So you're going to hit the x button, which is right here, and then square. And let's move over to the left side, all the way to the left, and make that bold. So hit enter once. That way you'll be able to tell the difference between the original function and the one that's being transformed. And our second function was x squared minus 7. So x squared. And minus is here. It's really important that you know the difference between the gray subtraction key, which I'm going to use here, and the white negative key, which we're going to use down in question number 5. Okay, so we want the subtraction of 7. Okay, now you hit zoom 6 for the standard window, and there's our original graph, and here's our other graph. And what happened was it shifted down 7 units. It kind of looks like it got wider, but it didn't. If you could see more of this graph, you would see that it simply shifted down. The vertical shift was 7 units. Okay, so back to our notes. We're going to make a note of that. We're going to write shift down 7 units. Okay? And I want you to proceed with the rest of column 1 on your own. I want you to pause the recording right now, and I want you to work out 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on your own, and then play the recording to check your answers. Okay? Pause. Okay, so I'm hoping you did pause and worked out 2, 3, 4, and 5 on your calculator and wrote some observations. Here are the words that I chose to use. So number 2, it shifted up 7 units. But that's not right. It really shifted up 4 units. Not sure why I wrote 7. Let's fix that. Nice. All right. And let's go to number 3. Shift left 5 units. Notice how it's a little weird. You might think it would go right because it's positive, and positive numbers are on the right. It's actually the opposite in the horizontal direction. So maybe make a note of that one. It's opposite from your intuition. Okay, so we're going to call that counterintuitive. Okay, the horizontal transformations, the ones that are inside the function, like 3 and 4, notice how those are inside the parentheses. Those are counterintuitive. You would think, at least I would, minus 6 would go to the negative numbers to the left. It actually goes to the right, 6 units. And finally, if you subtract outside the function, you don't subtract, you negate, I should say. You have a negative outside the function. It makes all the y values negative, which put all the y values below the x-axis. And that reflects the function in the x-axis. So those are the basic transformations. Your shifts up, left, up, down, right, and left, and your reflection. Okay? So I'd like to see if you can just base on that, notice some patterns, and work out questions 6 through 10, and then let's play the recording and see how you did. Okay? Go. Pause the recording. Okay, so I'm hoping you paused the recording and worked out numbers 6 through 10. Let's talk through these. First off, let's see what that graph would look like. This is the absolute value function. Those bars around the x mean the absolute value, meaning it takes whatever inside the function and says, what is its distance from 0? And its distance from 0 has to be positive, which means the absolute value function returns a positive number. Okay? So let's go back to our y equals and just see this graph. Let's hit delete. Let's keep that bold over on the left side. To get to the absolute value on this kind of calculator, you hit alpha and then you hit window. Alpha, green button, window, and it's that first choice. You want the absolute value of x. I like this because it makes my screen look exactly like my paper. Now I go down and I do the same thing. I'm going to hit clear, alpha, window, x, inside. Okay. And this time we wanted a plus 6 outside the function. So scroll to the right, plus 6. Because I'd already set it up in the standard window, I already hit zoom 6 last time, I can simply hit graph, and it makes the graph. So the absolute value makes a V shape. Notice how nothing's down here in the negatives? Because we said the absolute value had to be a positive. It returns a positive value. Now what happened? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It looks like it shifted up 6, and that's probably what you thought, right? You thought it would go up 6 because you saw over on the left side what happened when you added outside the function. All right? Let's review the answers. All right, and if you didn't write down answers yet, you better pause the recording right now. Don't just write down my answers. Write down what you think are the transformations, and then play the recording, please. Use your calculator if you want to double check. Okay, number 7 should be shifted down 5. Number 8 shifted right 3. Keep in mind that minus makes it go right when it's inside. And number 9 and 10, we have 9, we shifted left 4 units, and 10, we reflected in the x-axis because the negative is outside the function. It makes every value opposite. And everything was above the x-axis and everything is below. Last set. This time we're looking at a different function. And this one is the square root function. If you're not sure what it looks like, let's go check it out. Grab your calculator. Let's go into your y equals. Let's hit delete. And let's go second. And then the square root function's down here in blue. Square root of x. Let's just see that function. Let's just see what that looks like by hitting graph. Okay? Kind of looks like a sideways parabola. It grows quickly at first and it almost levels out. We want to see what happens when you transform that, specifically when you add 3. So you might already have an idea. I hope you have an idea if you've been paying any attention at all, where this thing's going to go if I put a plus 3 on the end outside the function. So make your prediction, and then go ahead and graph it, and let's see what happens. I'm going to go square root of x, and I'm going to add 3 outside the function. Make sure you go to the right, plus 3. Let's hit graph. Hoped it did. I hoped you thought that it was going to go up 3, right? It goes up 3 and everything else looks like it's 3 units away. It's like parallel, right? You might say. All right, so let's go back to our notes and note that it shifts up 3 units. I want to see if you can complete the rest of the column. In other words, 12 through 15. Pause the recording until you've done so. Use your calculator if you want to check or explore a little bit. That's just fine. Then play the recording when you have your answers. Okay, hopefully you paused and now are checking your answers. Those are what they were before, right? Shifts left if it's added inside the function, right if it's subtracted inside the function. Intuitive, counter from our intuitive, right? And then this one is what we've been seeing, right? Subtract outside the, or negative outside the function is going to make all the y values opposite. So in other words, it reflects over the x-axis. This last one's a little curveball. You might not have been sure what to do and maybe you explored with it, but it turns out it reflects in the y-axis. You might say, well, why didn't we do that with 5 and with 10? Why didn't we reflect the parabola or the absolute value? Well, go ahead and try it. What's it going to look like if you took a parabola and reflected it across the y-axis? Or an absolute value, the v shape, and did that? Okay. And so this one was a good one. This reflects in the y-axis if it's inside the function. So everything that's inside the function, you might notice, goes left and right horizontally. And everything's outside the function, like this, goes up and down vertically. Let's note some conclusions. Okay, so I've got some space for some conclusions at the bottom. You're going to have to write a little bit small. Okay, first, vertical shifting. Okay, so we said stuff outside the function, whether you're adding or subtraction, it goes up and down. Okay, so we're going to say if you put a plus k, and that k is positive, meaning it's greater than 0, then it's going to go up. And if k is less than 0, it's going to go down. So say k was a negative 3. That means the absolute value of 3, we're going to make positive 3. It's going to go down 3 units. Okay, the reason I'm using that absolute value is it just doesn't really come across clearly if I say it goes down negative 3 units. Well, is that really up because it's double negative? So that absolute value clears everything up. Okay. Make that note and then play the recording. For your horizontal shifts, we said everything inside the function shifts you left and right. So if I have a plus or a minus inside the function, it's going left and right. Left, if k is positive, we said that's counterintuitive. Right, if k is negative, we said that's counterintuitive from what we might thought. Play the recording when you've got that written down. And finally, your reflections. If there's a negative outside the function, it makes all the y values negative. That reflects over the x-axis. We saw that with every function we explored. And the one we saw in the last was if it's a negative inside the function, it reflects over the y-axis. Okay? We could only really see that with the radical. We couldn't observe that very well with the parabola or the absolute value because those were symmetric about the x-axis, excuse me, the y-axis. All right, so let's see if you know anything. Let's see if you can apply this stuff. I'm going to have you work on A through H. I'm going to have you match those up with 1 through 8. Okay? I'm not going to give you the answers right now. They'll review those in class. And then what I'm going to go over with you right now just a little bit is these questions where you're writing the transformation that you see. So let's just go through a few of these and make sure you're good. So if you look at a function x squared, and then you look at g of x being the transformation of x squared. In other words, it's got a plus 4 on the inside and a plus 2 on the outside. Well, what would that be? Write down what you think the answer is. Okay, hopefully you said it would shift. Because you see there's something inside the function. That's a plus 4. That means it goes left, right? It's counterintuitive. So left 4 units. Make a little bullet point. And then it's going to do another shift. This time it shifts plus 2 outside the function up 2 units. All right? I want you to work on 10 through 12, jotting down your observations. What transformation or multiple transformations do you see? And then check your answers. So pause, please. Okay, hopefully you paused. This one would be a reflection. The x-axis and a shift left. I always have to think about it. 7 units. And now the answers for 11 and 12. If you haven't done them, don't play and yet till you've worked those out. 11 and 12, there are those answers. Finally, I want to skip down to the bottom. Okay, these last 4 are challenging. F of x, you can't graph. You can't check this one by graphing, but hopefully you picked up enough. You know where that plus 10 is going to move this and where that minus 7 is as well. Pause until you have your answers. Okay, so hopefully you paused. And I can grab this thing. Where are you? Number 16. and number 17. Those are your answers. Thanks for watching.